we welcome in our guy on vacation. I'm going to assume off the beach of the MMQB, the great Albert Breer. What's up, buddy?
Hey, what's up, guys? How you doing? I'd say like I'm trying to not punch the gas this week, but it's hard not to with all the stuff going on. So trying to keep the tank as full as I can before next week.
Man, I'm telling you, Spencer and I both just recently came off vacations, and they were great vacations, and then we went right into work, and it is amazing how unvacationy you get very quickly.
What did you say? I missed that last part.
I said it's amazing how quickly unvacationy life can become.
Yeah, I don't know about you guys. Maybe it's a little different because like the way calendar works for me, because like my life ends like at the end of July every year. But I get that like anxiety when I'm at the end of my vacation in July of it's like the exact same feeling you got before like two-a-days started in high school or before the first day of school when you were younger than that, where it's like once you're in it, it's fine, but like looking at it is kind of scary. You know what I mean?
I know exactly what you're talking about.
Well, by the way, I still feel that way. Every once in a while, we're like, I guess I'll go do 5 hours, and it ends up being no big deal. So you wrote about the Browns quarterback situation and your takeaways here this week. Can you walk us through your thoughts on the balance of trying to see if any of these young guys have anything that they can put forward this year on the field for the Browns in camp versus maybe giving everybody the best chance to compete early in the season?
Well, let's start here. They're not starting from zero. They're not going into this with no information on these guys. And there's a reason why they held Joe Flacco back in the spring and kind of gave him like what I've called with you guys a first round bye in the quarterback competition. And so they gathered information on Kenny Pickett. They've gathered information on Dylan Gabriel. They've gathered information on Shedeur Sanders. And they know where all four guys are right now. Is there going to be somebody who's going to take a jump or has taken a jump based on the work he's done and whatever it is, 40 days between the end of minicamp and the start of training camp? That's possible. But I would think like right now they've got a coherent plan. And I think what's difficult about it, guys, is like this isn't a rebuilding team. They won 11 games 2 years ago. You have a lot of proud veterans in that roster who aren't looking for you to make a tournament out of the quarterback situation. And you have guys in that quarterback room who are a little bit different. I think if Kenny Pickett or Dylan Gabriel were the starter, you'd have a lot more movement stuff in the offense. You'd be kind of keying on their athleticism where, with Joe Flacco or Shedeur Sanders, you'd be playing the position in a little bit of a more traditional way. So, I mean, you add all that up, and I think, the reality is you want to be fair to the other people on the roster. You want to be in position to build an offense that works for everybody. And you want to give the guys who are going to be on the field in September the opportunity to work within that offense. So I think that makes it so you at least have to accelerate the process as much as you can. And I'll be interested to see creatively how Kevin Stefanski does that. My sense was that Shedeur Sanders was pretty far behind at the beginning, did some catching up over the course of the spring. But Dylan Gabriel showed really good instincts for the position, came along in the spring. And then I think Kenny Pickett is in position to compete for the starting job. What that adds up to, I don't know on the practice field next week, but it'll certainly be interesting to see how the reps are divided up.
Albert, I know you kind of ended your commentary on this the other day with the very ominous line about there's Deshaun Watson sort of lurking there too. How does something like how does this situation you think play out? Because I would imagine like the Browns can't just IR him before the season starts if he's trending towards returning, because that's an NFLPA dispute, right? Like, how does that all sort of come to fruition? What does that look like? And how do you think he factors into this quarterback competition as well?
Well, I think he starts starts training camp on PUP. And so that means like he can't set foot on the practice field to remain eligible. to go on the reserve PUP at the start of the regular season, which would put him out for the first month. And then, they kind of kick the can down the road on the decision until the beginning of December when it comes time to make decisions on what the roster is going to look like. I think the weird thing about it is, guys, is like despite everything, he's still the most talented quarterback on the roster. And like as much as you invested in him, and as much as you still have to invest in him going forward based on the guarantees and the contract, selling on him now, getting rid of him now, just bailing on him now would be selling really low. So like even if there's like a 1% chance that the old Deshaun Watson is going to reemerge at some point, you've already been through an entire offseason with him. I don't know. Like, I just sort of feel like, it makes sense to stash him, and see what happens. And maybe that's like just me holding on to what he was and what it looked like he was about to become over his first 4 years in the league. But, I don't know that there's some huge benefit to moving off of it. So I think like it's just now you take the summer figuring out how are you going to stash them, whether that's on IR or PUP.
Albert Breer on the fan hotline here with Nick Wilson, Spencer German. So TJ Watt is mired in a contract dispute with the Pittsburgh Steelers. Are we expecting him to show up to camp next week with Pittsburgh? And is there any end in sight to that standoff?
I don't. The easy answer for me on this is I don't know if he's going to show up to camp next week. I don't know if he knows, but I don't know. I think like this is a tricky one because TJ is a big reason why you go get Aaron Rodgers, right? Because you have this core of players that's starting to age, and TJ is going to be 31, I believe, later this year. He's not already, and so you're looking at like a roster that, you've gone all in on 2025 and bringing in older guys like Jalen Ramsey and Darius Slay and DK Metcalf, and you have Cam Hayward on the back end. And so, the reason why you do that is because you've been a pretty good team, like with the core that you have, and the best player in that core is TJ Watt. And so now you're leaning into that core because you believe you can take a swing for the fences with that core. And now you're going to get rid of the best player from that core. It doesn't make sense. So I understand why things are at a tenuous point right now for sure. The negotiation with, obviously the Myles Garrett contract plays into that pushing the number into the 40s, and then Max Crosby and Daniil Hunter, older guys are getting contracts that are in the mid 30s on an average per year basis. So, like, if you're going to sign TJ Watt for another few years, I think it's pretty clear what the cost is going to be. And I can understand also why the Steelers would be hesitant or would want to draw lines with Watt being his age. But I don't see a result where the best thing for Watt is to move on from the Steelers, or the best thing for the Steelers is going to be to move on from Watt. So I think eventually they'll find a solution, whether that's in the next week or it's right before week one, like the last time they went through something like this with Watt.
While we're on the subject of the Pittsburgh Steelers, Albert, would you say that they are the biggest threat to Baltimore in this division, or do you have your eye on somebody else?
Yeah, I think the Bengals, to me, watching the Bengals offense last year, and knowing what Joe Burrow is capable of, and knowing the talent he now has around him, I think there's a chance they could be better. I mean, remember last year they had lost their offensive coordinator and Brian Callahan, and they had both the receivers embroiled in these really messed up contract situations where it was, I think, affecting some things on the field, right? And you had an offensive line that, I think you're still getting the Marius Mims to the point where he's playing to his talent. And so, the offense was great last year. Joe Burrow, from a numbers standpoint, had an MVP type of year. And like you could be better on that side of the ball. And then defensively, if you can find a way to fix the Trey Hendrickson and Shamar Stewart situations, those are big ifs, right? Like, but if you fix those, and Al Golden coming in can give them a spark as the new coordinator, I don't know why that team wouldn't be thinking like we can make it back to the Super Bowl again. So I'm pretty high on the Bengals and where they're at and who Joe Burrow is as a quarterback, but I think the Steelers will be there in the mix too.
Albert, you're always so great with your time, man. Happy to have you back on board. Can't wait to talk to you next week when we are dealing with training camp here. You're a rock star. We appreciate you, brother.
Thanks, Albert.
All right, thanks, guys. And I think I'll be there in a couple of weeks too. So we'll have to see if things can work out while I'm there.
Oh, hell yes. Thank you, buddy. Albert Breer there, MMQB on the fan hotline.